Hi, and welcome to My Words, Our Journey, Episode 8 of Zodiac, Attempted Redemption. I'm Monty, your host and author. Before we begin with today's episode, let's recap what happened in Episode 7. After the stabbing in broad daylight, Michael is frustrated. Frustrated that no one sees what he sees, a system that was flawed when built, and the cracks that are showing. He has a more immediate problem, though. Muffler, his co-worker, who will not stop jabbing him about seeing him at the scene of the crime. A co-worker who has sent the police to his doorstep. Muffler is so sure that he saw Michael that he calls him out, tells him he better get his bloody clothes out of the washing machine. Michael is left with no choice. He feels cornered. He has to take out the voice that is causing light to be shown in his direction. Risky, but Michael has a plan. After the Zodiac kills a patrol officer who is assigned to the Marcy Johnson case, Clara and Sean follow a dark figure from several different cameras, down several blocks, and then into some wooded area. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Today, we begin with Chapter 47, entitled Death of a Salesman. McKinley Chevrolet felt more like a funeral home than a dealership. Michael was acting the part of a bereaved co-worker in shock. He'd taken a few pills an hour earlier, and they were doing their job. It had been announced the dealership would be closing early, but that the authorities had requested everyone remain until they arrived. Those words sent a chill through the building. But through one man, they sent shockwaves. Michael hadn't thought about that. He should have. Hadn't thought about his encounter with the detective. He should have. Sloppy, he thought. Now he was sure that the guy would be coming in to his workplace. Why wouldn't he? Had he gotten close enough to recognize him? The workday was short, but the day itself dragged. Small groups had gathered, sharing stories about Muffler. Funny stories. Stories about his mom. Stories about his work ethic. Michael felt like he was being punished. He just wanted out of the building. So, when the first detective walked through the front door, and it wasn't the one he was dreading, he made sure he was close. And it worked. Within a few minutes, they were sitting in a salesman's cubicle, having a nice chat about the dealership, its reputation, how long Michael had worked there. Then, Muffler. Michael was very forthcoming about the encounter in the park. He knew it'd come up, so he got ahead of it. Downplayed it, made it seem insignificant. When he was done, he felt like he'd done a decent job. The detective, however, was hard to read. Just took a couple of notes. Michael knew it would probably depend on how others described the same incident. Michael had taken a few items from the trailer to make it look like a robbery, then tossed them in the river. Gone. He saw no reason Muffler needed to be taken, other than his mouth. So, the Zodiac wouldn't be taking credit for this one. As Michael exited through the side door, he saw one of the senior salesmen speaking with the detective. That's Trammell, he thought. He just needed to slip out the door without being seen. Paranoia was setting in. Anyone would feel it. He just needed to get home. Spend time with Nicky, Buddy. Take his mind off things. As he pulled away from the dealership, he checked the rearview mirror. There, Detective Trammell stepped through the same side door Michael had just come through minutes earlier. He looked around, caught sight of the car, and watched it leave the lot. Michael had a feeling he'd begin a visitor soon. At the cottage, Michael busied himself with chores, did the dishes, folded a load of laundry, packed a cooler with drinks, sandwiches, and a couple snacks. He gathered Buddy's essentials and texted Nicky. A little over an hour later, they were sitting on a bench at the park, watching their puppy play. They drank grape soda, ate peanut butter and fluff sandwiches, told each other about their day. Nicky asked what was expected, but Michael was surprised at the tone, especially when it came to his encounter with Muffler. Nicky came close to crossing a line, realized it, pulled back. But it was too late. Michael felt it. The person he trusted most in the world didn't trust him the same way anymore. There was a shift in their universe. They both felt it. Sean and Clara arrived at McKinley Chevrolet a few minutes before Kenny and Leonard. Inside, the detective in charge asked Sean to begin interviewing employees. Clara knew the owners and managers, so she excused herself to speak with them directly. Soon after, Kenny and Leonard arrived. They agreed to assist with interviews before heading over to the crime scene. Sean's first interview was with a senior salesman named Trevor Milton. Mr. Milton was midway through a story about tension between the victim and another employee when that very employee walked past. Sean let Trevor finish, then stepped outside, hoping to catch up with the man, but the car was already pulling out of the lot. Michael Windsor, Sean made a note, top of his list. He returned to complete 6 more interviews before meeting up with Claire. The two had texted throughout the afternoon. At one point, he asked her to see if she could find Michael Windsor's address. The plan? Sean, Kenny, and Leonard would pay Michael a visit. Clara would run a few errands, meet them later for dinner. The cottage set back off the road. It was nice. Farmy, as Leonard put it. Not a word, but maybe it should be. Barn, animals, no vehicles in sight. Still, they approached cautiously. From the windows, it looked empty. Sean left his business card on a small glass table near the back door, where he placed a small rock on it to ensure it didn't blow away. A simple message written on the back. Please call. I'd like to speak to you. Chapter 47. They meet. The business card might have well as been a beacon, a silent alarm. Nikki went into full panic mode. Michael couldn't calm her down. She was convinced the police believed he had something to do with Muffler's death. She was convinced. While she took a long shower, trying to compose herself, Michael spiraled. Inside, he was a wreck. Michael had no plans to meet with the detective. None. But could he avoid it? What if they showed up at his work again? What were his rights? He'd already spoken to one detective. Maybe he should speak to a lawyer. But then again, wouldn't that make him look guilty? And the truth was, he was. He needed to lower his stress level, so he went to the one place he knew he might be able to get some help without hurting anyone, the garage. He loaded the CD player with some classic rock, cranked the volume, added more weights than usual to the bar, and launched into a punishing back and shoulder workout. 15 minutes in, he thought he heard a car door. It didn't even cross his mind that the detectives would be coming back in the same day. It didn't cross Nikki's either. Now she stood, frozen on the back steps, a look of pure terror on her face. Michael had nowhere to run. Not that he would have. The 3 detectives were already making their way towards the garage. He lowered the music, grabbed his towel, wiped his face, picked up his water bottle, and stepped into the yard to meet them. After the introductions, Michael apologized for not calling back. He said he assumed they were off duty for the night, and that he planned on calling the following morning. A lie Michael hoped that they didn't pick up on. Nikki emerged with sweet tea and the best smile she could manage. The detectives told her she could stay, but she could read the look on Michael's face. Nikki wanted to stay, like her life. Her future depended on it. Still, she went inside, curled up on the couch, scrolled through old photos of the 2 of them in high school, wishing for better days. Kenny had picked up on the moment. He'd read up on Michael before they left, and before the night was over, he planned to speak to Nikki. Michael didn't seem to know he had every right to end the conversation at any time. He gave the impression he was obligated to talk. And the detectives, they were fine with letting him believe that. As the conversation began to wind down, Kenny offered to take the glasses inside. Leonard and Sean picked up on the gesture. They steered the conversation towards Michael's Monte Carlo. Something light, relatable. Michael eased, let his guard down. Inside, Kenny found Nikki at the kitchen table, crying softly. He placed the glassware in the sink and asked if he could sit. She nodded. He knew Leonard and Sean would keep Michael occupied long enough for him to get what he needed, but he still moved quickly. A few minutes later, Kenny returned outside. To his surprise, Leonard and Sean were in the garage with Michael, flipping through his music collection. Leonard called out, laughing, "This guy has every Bad Company album on 8-track, and they're all pink." Kenny chuckled. They definitely made Michael feel at ease. They all shook hands, thanked him for his time, and walked away. Michael, none the wiser. Chapter 48. The Puzzle. Sean liked the hunt, the puzzle. The pieces had to fit, naturally, no forcing. This Michael Windsor character. He could have been the jogger, similar build, hair matched, but it was from a distance. He would have to say at this point, a solid maybe. Then there was the girlfriend Nikki. Kenny had only had a couple minutes with her, but they were valuable. Mood swings, anger, long absences, money that supposedly came from odd jobs with friends at odd hours, friends Nikki had never actually met. She clearly loved him, and she was worried. When Kenny suggested she stay with her parents until the case broke, she panicked. He hadn't pushed, but now the trio, Sean, Kenny, and Leonard, they were worried, not just for the case, but for her safety. Michael felt the world collapsing. Nikki had been distant, ever since the detectives had left. Had Kenny, the slick one, said something to her in the kitchen? Michael couldn't remember how long he'd been gone. She hadn't said anything, but when he pushed, she cried. Did she think he was the killer? Maybe, and that thought shattered him. He didn't know why he was still going to work. The authorities were closing in. They'd probably spoken to Clara. They had shared so much. His thoughts? Shattered. Scattered. 8 summers earlier. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday, a carefree day in the life of a boy. Worried about what his mom was cooking for dinner, how long he could talk to his girlfriend on the phone. But at 3:42 p.m., a drunk driver ran a stop sign and slapped into the school bus, number 224. One child died. Seat number 171. Melody Blankenship. Her parents, Steve and Ruby. Her brother, Max. Her boyfriend, sitting beside her that day, Michael Windsor. The paramedics said she died instantly, felt no pain. Michael never believed them. Not then, not now. The driver survived, drove 2.2 miles home, parked in her driveway, was eating a bowl of cereal on her couch when the police arrived. The case became a firestorm. The driver's husband left. Her kids disappeared. She got life. Clara had covered the story, from the crash to the courtroom, to the settlements and follow-ups. And along the way, she found an angle. The grieving teenage boyfriend, a young man who just needed someone to listen. Michael. The more he wanted to talk, the more Clara listened and wrote. When he went quiet, she talked to make him comfortable, gave him her contact information so he could reach out. But Michael misunderstood. He thought Clara had feelings for him, romantic feelings. Michael began to follow her, call and hang up, show up places she didn't expect. It could have ended badly, but Clara wasn't that kind of person. She knew she had to, in some way, used Michael, so she did something rare. She went to his house, spoke with his parents, apologized to them and to Michael. They worked it out. Over time, they kept in touch. Big life events, small ones. And that changed something. He began to love her in a different way, a maternal way. She had been kind to him when he was shattered. She had listened, understood, accepted him, even when he was broken. He'd followed her career ever since, and now he was part of her story again. Only this time, he was going to write the ending. Chapter 49. No grand finale. With every communication over the loudspeaker, Every time someone walked through the door, Michael felt a ping in his chest. Why didn't he run? And once he got to work, why hadn't he left? He didn't really know. Maybe because there was nowhere left to go. Maybe he had no grand finale. Not for him. Not the kind with headlines, with mythology, with fear disguised as fame. Only silence and failure. It was clear now. He wasn't going to live the life he had once imagined his grandfather had lived. A shadow life. Killing just enough to feed the craving. Still holding down a job. Smiling for photos. Coming home to someone who loved him. That was the dream. He wanted that life for Nikki. For himself. But now, all he could think about was, how was it going to end? Would he see her again? Kiss her one more time? Or had they already said their last goodbye, with suspicion dangling in the air? Would he see his parents? Would he be taken alive? Would he fight? He hadn't decided. Wrecker could tell something was off. He chalked it up to stress, the grief of losing Muffler, so he let it slide. The day couldn't go any slower for Michael. The weekend was coming. They were both off for the next 2 days. Right before clock out, Wrecker got a call from the sales manager. When he hung up, he tossed Michael the key fob to a vehicle. Can you put this back on the lot? Sales fell through. Boss wanted it looking good for the weekend. Thanks. Tracy made us reservations at Tony's. And just like that, Michael was left alone. He exited through the side door, half expecting flashing lights, badges, voices shouting his name. He stood in the stillness of the service lot, just him and a half-dozen cars. He pressed the key. The horn chirped on a black C8 Corvette. Michael smiled. If this was the last car he ever moved from McKinley, it was a good one. Then the voice whispered, why not take it? A farewell tour. He parked it out front. Perfect angle, perfect shine. Paused. If he were to, it would be easy. So easy, the voice whispered. He had the key. License plate? 2 on his desk. Easily slipped inside his backpack. Come back after dark, put the plate on, start her up, gone. He even had a gas card in his locker. An hour later, Michael sat at the same kitchen table where Kenny had spoken with Nikki. Now, he started a note. Her handwriting, soft loops, careful strokes. The answer to at least a couple of his questions. He would never see Nikki or Buddy again. She had left, gone to her parents. The note said she was afraid of him. Michael felt something split inside. Not a crack, a tear. He was devastated. The break wasn't just sadness. It was something more. He hadn't killed since Muffler. Not long in real time, but to him, it felt like a lifetime. It was time to hunt. There were no names, no direction, not yet. Life had gotten in the way of death. But that had changed. Now, with Nikki gone, the final thread had been cut. His strength, gone. His strength gone, his reason gone. The truth had settled in. The girl who had once loved him had been living with a serial killer. And now she knew it. The words in her letter cut holes in his chest. She hadn't been wrong. Michael could have been like his grandfather. He knew it. He knew it deep in his core. But now he knew something else too. He had lost Nikki forever. And without her, the voice had all the room it needed. Chapter 50. Live. When Sean told Clara the only name on their suspect list was Michael Windsor, she fell to the sofa. Then she told the story, her story, to Sean, Kenny, and Leonard. How she'd met Michael, how he'd misunderstood her kindness, how it could have ended badly but didn't. When Clara finished, Kenny added that Michael's girlfriend had taken his advice and moved back in with her parents, at least until things settled, had been her words. That gave them some sort of comfort, for now. Michael's supervisor confirmed he had worked a full shift the day Muffler died. Nothing unusual, no red flags. Still, the team had contacted the local FBI office. Agent Haywood Hardy agreed. Michael Windsor needed to be put under immediate surveillance. Sean had been digging into Michael's family. His father, still alive, an accountant, never even had a speeding ticket. His grandfather, a military man, no record, no suspicion in the original Zodiac investigation. A family name one could be proud of. So, Sean wondered, were they wrong? Was Michael just a strange guy? Because strange didn't mean killer. But Kenny couldn't shake it. They mapped the route. Neighbors confirmed Michael was a runner. The timeline worked. It was plausible. He could have killed Muffler. He could have dumped the items. He could have cleaned up and gone to work like nothing ever happened. Which meant he could be the new Zodiac. And if that was the case, then one of his relatives, maybe his grandfather, had been the original. Michael had come back from a 4-mile run, convinced every car that passed was a trap. He wasn't going to fight. He'd made that decision. If they came for him, he'd go peacefully. He wasn't going to taint his family name any further. He wasn't going to let Nikki see him being taken away on live TV. The humiliation would be unbearable. He left the doors unlocked, took a long shower. Still, no knock, no sirens, no shouting. After dressing in cargo pants and his favorite t-shirt, Michael sank into the beanbag chair. He missed Nikki. So much it hurt. He drifted off. But the dreams didn't last. His phone rang, a number he recognized. The voice on the other end of the line said only one word, "Run." Michael bolted upright, disoriented, panicked. He grabbed his keys, headed for the door, then doubled back. Cash, he needed cash. In the garage, he grabbed both duffel bags and peeled out. The sun was setting. It was somewhere between dusk, not quite dark. But they'd know who took the car. It didn't matter. He parked the Monte Carlo on the side of the building, retrieved the license plate from his backpack, then casually walked over to the black Corvette. A few minutes later, he was on the 101 heading south. In San Lucas, he filled up with premium fuel, then followed the 12-step process he had found online to disable the OnStar tracking system. What couldn't you find on the internet, he thought. In Barstow, he picked up 40, then 15 north, Las Vegas. He'd never been. He and Nikki always talked about going. He used to joke they'd get married there, by an Elvis impersonator. When Michael didn't return home and the Monte Carlo wasn't found, an APB went out. His name, his photo, his vehicle. Sean blamed himself. A neighbor said they'd missed Michael by about 5 minutes. It didn't take long to find the Monte Carlo at the dealership. It took even less time to confirm the Corvette was missing. And it nearly took an act of Congress to find out that his tracker had been disabled. The FBI released his photo, his car description, the stolen plate number. Michael heard it first on XM radio, then again and again. He changed license plates when he could, rest stops mostly. He aborted a few swaps, too many eyes. He did his best. He pulled out the fourth disposable cell and dialed. She picked up immediately. "Hi, Michael." "Hi, Clara." They could use real names now. Michael welcomed Sean, Kenny, and Leonard to the call, asked if anyone else was listening. No one was. He believed them. Then, after a long pause, he made his request. They were quiet, surprised, but they understood. If they wanted to get anything more from the Zodiac, it would have to be done live. Chapter 51, Vegas. The authorities were notified immediately. Over eager rookie floated the idea of tricking Michael, making the live podcast seem live when it wasn't. Michael shut it down before she finished her sentence. "He'll know," he said flatly. "He's not stupid, and this can't go sideways." Michael sat in a massive parking lot just off of Las Vegas Strip, backed in, facing a giant waterfall that lit up with music and colors every few minutes, a tourist magnet. It would be his view for the night. He had snacks, bottled waters, a couple of sweet teas, and smokes. He sat on the curb and lit one. The Corvette, he decided, was too nice to reek of cigarette smoke. Clara had promised to call back in a few minutes. He hadn't planned what to say. They would ask questions. He'd answer. Or he wouldn't. Simple. Las Vegas was the kind of place you could disappear in, blend into the noise, be a podcast feature 1 minute, slip into a crowd of Elvis impersonators the next. Michael wondered, how long could the Zodiac stay the Zodiac in Sin City? The call came in at 7:03 p.m. It ended just after 9 p.m. They asked about his plans. He told them the truth. He didn't have one. The voice had gone quiet. No orders, no clarity, no whispers. But the need, the hunger, that remained. He didn't lie about that. He apologized to Nikki, tried one last time to explain who his grandfather really was, a great man, despite his sins. No one would believe him, but he had to say it. He had to try. He talked about the blood, how it moved through his veins into his brain. He wasn't making excuses, just offering something useful. Data, psychology, pattern. Maybe it would help someone down the road, someone else born with the rage. For some reason, Michael had the sense that Sean believed him, at least a little. He explained the voice, the fury, the pressure. He hadn't asked for any of it, but it was his burden, his inheritance. As the call wound down, so did he. There was nothing more to say. He lit another cigarette, inhaled. There was quiet on the other end of the phone. No grand finale, just a pause. Then, God only knows what the next chapter of this story will be, Michael said. Thanks for the opportunity. Like it was a job interview, or a job that he almost got right. He offered to be studied after it was over, and then the line went dead. The burner couldn't be traced. GPS disabled. He had vanished. Not the FBI, not the task force, not Michael, had any idea where he was headed. His photo and the stolen Corvette were everywhere. News networks, social media, police scanners. If he wasn't before, he was now officially considered armed and dangerous. His parents had no clue where he might go. Nikki didn't either. He had distant relatives in Seattle and eastern North Carolina, but no one thought he'd reach out. He had no one now. The question loomed, would he make a run for the border? Mexico? Canada? Both were being watched. Sean wasn't convinced he'd leave the country. Clara feared something else entirely, something bigger, something final. The not knowing was the worst part. Everyone was on edge. 24 hours after the podcast, Michael was suffering. The headache had returned, brutal, unrelenting. Worse than anything he'd had in weeks. He was doing everything he could to avoid the stronger pills. He wanted to stay clear. He wanted to be sharp, because he knew what was coming. He would need to kill. Soon. Not for justice, not for legacy, just to feel alive a little longer. Chapter 52. Diamond. The experience couldn't be explained. It had to be lived. Michael never would have believed it. This city, this noise, this swirl of humanity, if it weren't his feet on the pavement, his eyes taking it in. It was sensory overload. The streets were packed. He wandered, watched, drifted. Finding people who were bad for society, keepers of Sin City's worst reputation, wouldn't be hard. Separating them from the crowd? That could be. He nursed a drink, played a slot, then moved to another bar. A cover band played Fleetwood Mac, so well he nearly forgot why he was there. Almost. The third spot? That was the charm. Michael walked through the door and was approached immediately by a man selling drugs. 10 minutes later, a young woman slid into the bar stool beside him. She called herself Diamond. To Michael, she looked more like Stacy from Iowa, someone who had just stepped off the train, running from someone. He bought her a drink, made sure it was clear that was all he was buying. She was new. It showed. She didn't belong there. Then a tall, older woman came by. A whisper in Diamond's ear. She was gone. Drink left on the counter, following the woman toward the restroom. Michael stayed, finished his drink, dropped a token in the nearest slot machine. Michael pulled the lever. Won $10 in chips. Maybe it's your lucky day, the voice said, which means it's someone else's unlucky one. Outside, Michael lit a cigarette, just like he needed some fresh air. Security cameras everywhere. He made sure to look casual. He found Diamond again 2 blocks away, moving with that trained rhythm, available but guarded. It was probably why she was in trouble, not making the bosses enough money. Michael approached, slowly, spoke softly, handed her a few bills, just enough for her eyes to see. Then he walked her towards the motel behind the casino. Around the corner, he stopped, faced her. If I can help you get home, he asked. Will you go? He didn't push, didn't say anything else, just waited. We have work to do, the voice snapped. What are you doing? But Michael stayed focused. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw movement. The tall woman again, this time with 2 large men. They'd come to check on their property. Michael acted fast. The only thing that made sense. He kissed Diamond, long and slow, the kind of kiss that made a statement. When he pulled back, he noticed the trio, acted like it was for the first time. Then he took Diamond's hand and walked towards them, casual, confident. Maybe the country's most wanted man, saving a girl from her worst mistake. Why not? He smiled. Then, glad you're here, he said smoothly. I'd like to spend the night with this lovely lady, if she'll have me. How much would that cost me? Silence. He didn't repeat the question, just waited. Eventually the woman spoke. $3,500. Michael didn't flinch. He paid the money, turned to leave, then paused, glanced back. You all have a good night. Chapter 53, Room 171. Michael was taking a huge risk. If Diamond, her real name Taylor, lost her nerve or turned on him, it could be all over. But he didn't think she would. They moved the car to a safer lot. Now Michael lay in the bed of a truck, nestled beneath the blanket in shadow, waiting for the men he knew would come. When he had paid for Diamond, it had been clear to everyone watching. He had money. He was alone. He'd be an easy target. The tall woman in charge? She'd seen it all. Michael was counting on that. Taylor had promised to go home, back to her mother and sisters. She'd finished high school if he put her on the bus. The station was nearby. The car was parked in an overflow lot just a block away. He'd paid for it, cash. Safe enough for her to rest until departure. She had an envelope, cash for the ticket, food for the ride. If he didn't return, she still had a way to get out. He was beginning to doubt his instincts when he felt it, a footstep. Close, then more, measured, steady. 4 men. They moved like starving predators, inching towards room 171, as if pulled by instinct. 4. 3 more than he had hoped, but fewer than she could have sent. That mattered. The parking lot was dim. Shadows stretched like claws across the pavement, reaching for door 171 as if hungry for his soul. Michael remained still, breathing slowed. He knew the order mattered, every moment, every second. 10, 2, 6, and 8. If the parking lot were a clock face, those would be their positions. And when they hit their marks, Michael fired 4 shots, 4 hard falls. Michael rode out of the truck, scanning the silence. Nothing stirred. He checked his watch. 4 minutes until the bus left. He only needed 2. Hood up, head down, he crossed the street. 3 women stood outside a different motel, chatting, softly, unaware. He didn't stop, didn't hesitate. He stepped between them and fired. The tall woman, the one who sent the men, took the bullet to the face at point-blank range. Then Michael ran up the alley, listening for pursuit. There was none. He almost wished there was. Taylor stood in line at the bus station, clutching her envelope. She looked up just as Michael rounded the corner. He stopped, met her gaze, gave a thumbs up. She nodded. A teenage girl, maybe 15, free. Michael stood by the hood of the Corvette and smoked 2 cigarettes. The sirens were already echoing in the distance. He knew he should go, but he waited, just long enough to watch the bus pull out of the station, just long enough to believe she had a chance. Then he followed, eased onto the road, just behind the tail lights. Once they hit the interstate, he settled into the middle lane at 68 miles per hour, let the hum of the highway soften the echoes that surrounded him. A wave of missing Nikki washed over him, so strong it made his hands tremble. The urge to call her, just to hear her voice one more time. The car jerked slightly. He looked around. No cops. Not yet. 20 minutes later, he pulled into a rest area and tucked the Corvette between an RV and a Lowe's truck. Not ideal. He had no other choice. Chapter 54. Sunday. Perfect weather. Allegiant Stadium gloomed over the Las Vegas skyline, hulking, otherworldly, like a spaceship grounded in desert light. To Michael, it was sacred ground, a family shrine. 3 generations of Windsor men, each loyal to the Raiders, his grandfather, his father, himself. They'd never been the shoulder pad and war paint type, but they sat with the ones who were. The Raider Nation, loud, loyal, obsessed. Michael knew he was a wanted man. His face was on TV, his name trending, but he also knew he couldn't run forever, and he wasn't going to. The voice was gone again. The rage had cooled. He just wanted to see his Raiders play one last time. It wasn't about the game, not really. It was about going back to laughter, to legacy, to the only place that ever really felt like home. When the gates opened, he tapped the app on his phone and held his breath, silently pleading for the digital ticket to scan. When it did, he drifted through the crowd, past the chants and the merchant stands, until he found a quiet patch of shade beneath an old oak. For a fleeting, precious moment, Michael felt at peace. Then, almost instinctively, he pulled out his phone and dialed the number. This time, Sean answered. "Hello?" "Just the person I was hoping to speak with," Michael said. "Hello, Michael. How can I help you end this?" "I'm done, Sean. The voice is gone. I'm not going to hurt anyone else. I like Clara. I think you do too. Be good to her, please. She's a nice lady." There was a pause. Then, "I'll be easy to find. I haven't gone that far. I'll be surrounded by thousands like me. People who love what I love. Just let me forget the outside world for a little while. Then I'll walk out to you." The line went dead before Sean or Clara could respond. The room fell silent. Finally, Sean spoke. "So, do we believe this guy?" Clara spoke first. "Yes." Sean nodded. He leaned that way too. There was something different about Michael this time. Someone asked, "Any idea where this guy could be?" He said to be surrounded by thousands like him today. Who loved like him, Sean echoed. We need a list. Concerts, festivals, games. A young analyst in the back called out. A couple NFL games kicking off soon. Background noise on the call might have been crowd noise. Sean's team jumped on it. Within minutes, they had confirmed it. Background audio matched the live feed from the Raiders' home game. They checked the Windsor name, season tickets, section C133, row 12, seats 1 through 6. The FBI secured seats in row 27 of the same section. Sean's team somehow landed row 13, seats 1 and 2. Neither Sean nor Kenny asked how. They just thanked the staff and made a mental note to buy them something special when this was over. Then they boarded the helicopter, hoping to make the second quarter. Michael was nervous as he approached the section. These were his people. He had seen their faces for years. They had watched him grow up. He had to hope nostalgia would shield him. Black and silver face paint, Raiders jersey, hot dogs, beer, cheers. Michael became Phil from Reno, a used car salesman who scored a ticket from a resale site. Section C133, row 12, seat 3, the Windsor seats. A family heirloom. The game kicked off, Broncos 14, Raiders 6 by the end of the first quarter. But Michael was smiling, laughing, talking football with those around him. Then, at the start of the second quarter, two familiar faces slid into the seats behind him. Sean, then Kenny, hot dogs in hand, beers, casual smiles, like they were really going to let him enjoy the game. The Raiders received the kickoff, drove down the field, first down, then a penalty, a deep pass to the 3-yard line. Next play, touchdown. The stadium erupted, high fives, chants, unity, even among the detectives. Michael grinned, looked at Sean. They scored when you guys showed up, he said. Maybe you're good luck. Sean smiled. Maybe. None of them knew if Michael was armed. Security should have prevented it, but he'd outwitted systems before. Still, they believed him. When the game ended, he would walk out with them, into custody, into history. Best laid plans. Midway through the third quarter, Stuart Bigley was drunk, loud, obnoxious, and for some reason, fixated on Phil from Reno. Phil, what's your favorite meal at Bully's Tavern? Michael shrugged. Never been. Never been? What about Death by Nails? You had to go there. Michael was annoyed. Yeah, whatever. Stu kept pressing. The doorman at Death by Nails. What color's his hair? Michael tried to brush him off. Sean, Kenny, they all tensed. Just say bald, they thought. He's bald, Michael muttered. Wrong answer. Stu stood. He has the blackest, longest hair you've ever seen. You ain't from Reno. Michael said nothing. Let me guess. Favorite restaurant, high school. Where's the post office? Michael stayed quiet. Then came the moment. The pointing finger. That's him. That's the Zodiac guy's grandson. He killed all those people. The mob swallowed Michael whole. A tidal wave of fists, screams, of rage. Kenny reached for him, grabbed the back of Michael's jacket, tried to pull him out of the storm. Too late. Two fans seized Michael's arms. Kenny lost his grip. The jacket tore away. The beating really began. Punches, boots, shouts. Michael dropped. He curled up, tried to protect himself, but the blows kept coming. He felt his ribs crack, blood flow into his mouth. Something ripped behind one eye. Sean and Leonard fought through the chaos. Security followed. Too late. The game was halted. The broadcast caught everything. To the nation, it looked like another brawl in the stands. But it wasn't. It was Michael Windsor, watching his beloved Raiders one last time. Not taken down by SWAT, not by courtroom justice, but by strangers, by fury, by hands that didn't know his story, only his crimes. Justice? Maybe, but it came with fists, not a verdict. Chapter 55. Savannah. By the time the mob, tired of beating Michael, the body of the Zodiac lay broken, bruised, and twisted between the aisles, face paint smeared with sweat and tears, blood pooling. The medical examiner would later conclude that Michael had been alive through most of the assault. A final blow to the head was likely the cause of death. Each man saw something different in the end. Leonard believed it was justice. Kenny felt like the weight of society collapsed. Is this what the world has come to? Sean, though, saw the loss of potential. A tragedy, a missed opportunity to study a killer raised in the shadow of the original Zodiac, a case that could have reshaped how they understood inherited trauma. But he would keep those thoughts to himself, for now. Most people wouldn't understand. There were no final notes, no manifesto, no lingering riddles, no murder weapon, no trace of the stolen money, just a man erased by rage and chaos. The Corvette was recovered without a scratch, spotless inside. The owner relieved, though irritated by the added mileage. Clara was waiting at the station when the team returned. Everyone noticed how she ran straight into Sean's arms. So did Sean. Styx nearly took Leonard to the ground, he was so excited. The next 4 days were a blur. Interviews, paperwork, legal meetings. Authorities and lawyers dotted every I and crossed every T, making sure there'd be no legal fallout from the public takedown of one of America's most wanted men. On the 5th day, they accompanied Kenny to the airport. His flight was bound for Raleigh-Durham. But not before a round of drinks in the lounge. He struck up a conversation with a woman, headed in the same direction. By the time his boarding group was called, Kenny had forgotten all about his fear of flying. 2 days later, Clara and Sean said goodbye to Leonard and Styx, who began the long road trip back to the East Coast. Clara packed Leonard his own custom trail mix, a thoughtful touch he appreciated. Clara and Sean boarded a flight to Georgia, Savannah. There, they had recorded the last final episodes of Zodiac, Attempted Redemption, and quietly explore what came next for them. They had the talk, agreed they were open to the idea of a relationship, an exclusive one. Their first full day was spent sightseeing. Clara had fond memories of the city. For Sean, it was a first. Spanish moss, cobble streets, quiet charm, a welcome reprieve. On day 2, they recorded the next to last episode. No missed recordings, no forgotten lines, just 2 people finding their rhythm. On the 3rd day, it rained. They stayed in, recorded the final episode. Michael's story had always been about duality, legacy, loss, redemption, destruction, and now closure. They discussed his final acts, the attempt to save a life, to do something right, even if it came too late. His end had been brutal, but it had been an ending. Clara found it difficult to speak at times, but she got through it, her purpose clear. Afterward, they stepped out into the post-storm mist and walked together through a quiet park. Pizza from a local pizzeria. A good day. They didn't talk about what would come next, returning to their old lives, their routines, but that conversation would come, eventually, maybe on the flight home. Sean squeezed Claire's hand gently. For now, they had Savannah, and each other. Sean was sitting at the breakfast nook when Clara emerged from the bedroom. She went straight for the coffee, then sat across from him. "You got up early," she said. "I couldn't sleep," Sean replied. His eyes were locked on a small recorder in his hand. Something started to pull at me, that little voice, telling me to listen to Michael's last tape again. Clara half laughed. Not a voice, Sean. But he didn't laugh. She noticed. "Is something wrong?" Sean hit play. "I was going to surrender. She called, said run, so I ran." Michael's voice, a whisper. "This was at the end of the live episode," Sean said, his voice low. "I thought I heard him say something before he hung up, but I couldn't make it out. So I had my team isolate it, clean it up." Clara was still. Then, "Sean," she began, but he cut in gently. Her tone shifted, defensive. "Sean!" "Clara," he said, firm but quiet. "Tell me I'm wrong." Clara stood. "I'm going to take a shower." A couple hours later, there was a knock at the door. Sean answered. Clara's attorney, Trinity Kimball. She stepped inside. They exchanged stiff pleasantries. Trinity had become a familiar face over the last few days. "I was instructed to go into the bedroom with Clara when I arrived," she said. Sean nodded. Nearly 30 minutes passed. Then Clara and Trinity exited the room and walked directly out the front door, into the waiting arms of the local authorities and the FBI. Sean didn't watch. He sat on the back porch and dialed Leonard's number. 4 rings, Leonard answered. "Can I tell you and Sticks a story while you're driving?" Sean asked. Zodiac, Attempted Redemption. Final episode. Signed, Sean Trammell. Transcript. Recorded live in Savannah, Georgia. Soft instrumental music faded out. Sean, this is the Zodiac Attempted Redemption podcast. I'm Detective Sean Trammell. Tonight's not about evidence. It's not about theories or timelines or motive. It's about frustration. It's about what we lost. We lost a suspect. We lost a witness. We lost a case that could have changed the way we understand criminal legacy. And more importantly, we lost a chance. Michael Windsor wasn't just a killer. He was born in the shadow of one. Raised in a family with secrets. The Zodiac wasn't just history to him. It was inheritance. We will never fully understand the psychological fracture that created him. Not because we lack the tools, but because he died before we could ask the right questions. Because justice came with fists, with boots, with a crowd that wanted blood more than answers. And I get it. I do. I've lost people. I've stared into the eyes of monsters. And there's a part of me that thinks Michael got what he deserved. But there's another part that wonders what we could have learned if we'd only had a little more time. What if we could have mapped the exact moment when obsession be turned into ideology, when legacy mutates identity, when someone stops seeing people and starts seeing targets? Michael Windsor is dead, so are his secrets, so are answers. But I'm still here, and so are you, listening, which means something. It means this story mattered, and maybe that's the best we can hope for. That stories like this one don't just fade into infamy. They teach us, that they echo, that they warn. I'm Detective Sean Trammell. Thank you for walking through this darkness. The story was over, at least the part the world would see. After the podcast, Sean couldn't help but play the clip one last time. Unpublished audio clip, St. Cloud, archive folder, untitled file. Click. Clara's voice. I knew. There was a pause. Not everything, not at first. Another pause, but enough to speak up. I chose not to. I chose not to stop it. There was a deep breath. He was a story I couldn't walk away from. A broken young man fighting something we can never understand. I wanted to believe there was still something good in him. Maybe because I needed it to be true. For me. If lives were going to be lost anyways, I thought I could frame the narrative. Some kind of faint background noise. I thought I could guide the storm. Another long pause. I couldn't. Click. Sean visits Faith's portrait studio the day before he leaves California. The bell above the door chimed softly. Faith looked up from behind the counter, a roll of black and white proofs spread in front of her. Her hair was tied back. A camera still hung from her neck. Didn't expect to see you here, she said. Sean stepped inside, holding a small bouquet. Sunflowers. Wild. Not dramatic, just sincere. I'm heading out of town tomorrow, he said. Wanted to say thank you. And I'm sorry. She waited. Fair enough, he added. You were a lot of help. I took advantage. Faith took the flowers, her eyes studying him for a long moment. You did good work. Took a village, Sean said. Each one leaves you a little less. She gave a small nod. You didn't have to come here. I know, he said. That's why I did. Faith stepped out from behind the counter. Want a portrait? She asked, teasing. Only if you can take 10 years off my face. She smiled. You'd be surprised what I can do. Then she turned and called through the curtain behind her stool. Beth, you good? A friend just surprised me with a lunch invitation. The aftermath. Nikki had to drop out of college. She found out she was pregnant long before leaving the cottage. It was the hardest thing she'd ever done. Not telling Michael. Not being with him. Maybe if he had known. Maybe he would have changed. Turned himself in. Something. Mr. and Mrs. Windsor left their home in the middle of the night, relocating to a remote stretch of the Appalachian Mountains. No interviews. No statements. No apology to the families. Just silence. As if silence could somehow rewrite history. There was no denial, no defense, no nothing. Clara, through her attorney, maintained her innocence for 7 days. On the 8th, Trinity Kimball stepped up to the podium. They would be making a deal. Clara St. Cloud would serve her sentence at California Institute for Women. Chino, San Bernardino County. We did what was necessary to bring resolution. The families deserve peace. Trinity Kimball. It wasn't a win, at least not for Sean. It was just another blow in a long string. The box, found on the floorboard of the C8, beneath an old sweatshirt. Its new home, shelf 3726D, evidence room, SFPD. A quiet ending to a loud legacy. A relic, quietly waiting. Kenny and Leonard surprised Sean with a deep-sea fishing trip, a full week in the Florida Keys, oceanfront rooms, no talk of cases, no autopsy reports, just sun, salt, and silence. A different kind of healing. The trip was working. Sean was relaxed. He hadn't seen a fish, let alone caught one. But he'd met a guy with the best cigars in the Keys. Heavenly. Leonard joined him on the beach, wiped the sweat from his brow, and said, Sean, I've been thinking. You should write a book about your exploits. Can't be that hard, right? Zodiac attempted redemption. He wanted to be good. The Zodiac wouldn't let him. Thank you for taking this journey with me. If you like it, please tell a friend. If you know someone that would rather read